Hi everybody, BeanMeister22 here. I did not want to make this video, but I was contacted by several people saying, hey, you worked in the oil industry, make a video about what's going on with BP and the Gulf oil spill. So reluctantly, I said, alright, I will. I have seen dozens of videos here on YouTube by people who have no idea what they're talking about what should happen to BP, about what the government should do, and about how to plug the well itself. These people have no idea what they're talking about. As for my credentials, I've worked in the oil industry for more than 20 years, and now I work in the chemical industry. I was an oil inspector, I have worked for a major oil company, and I've worked on oil tankers. I know a little bit about oil, and hey, I've been up to my neck in crude oil dozens of times. It's part of the job. The first thing that everyone needs to understand is the oil industry is a dangerous business. People die, sometimes from human error, sometimes from just Mother Nature, and sometimes just plain bad luck. People die and things go wrong. And even with all the safeguards and safety devices and proper procedures, hey, things can go wrong. And this oil leak in the Gulf of Mexico is a prime example of that. This is a catastrophic failure. This is a worst case scenario. And that's what people don't yet understand. People have been politicizing this. In fact, the U.S. government has been politicizing this to push a whole different agenda. BP has been demonized, as well as the rest of the oil industry. But what everybody out there really needs to know is the entire oil industry is working on this problem. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not a fan of BP, and I have never worked for BP. And I believe they have drugged their heels a little bit when this first happened, and at that point, that is when the government should have stepped in. But the government didn't step in. The government sat back and said, well, these are the experts, they know what they're doing. Well, generally, that is not a bad route to take, except there are some things that are so catastrophic and so big that the government needs to step in. There is no reason that days after this happened that the Navy was not activated, that the Coast Guard was not out there with every available ship. The U.S. government has turned down help from several different countries. This oil spill disaster has been made worse by the U.S. government. Governor Jindal in Louisiana wanted to build barrier berms to stop the oil from coming ashore. The U.S. government would not let him do it. It was weeks before the government finally gave approval. And that approval was given after Governor Jindal just decided to do it for himself. Just recently, the U.S. Coast Guard shut down Louisiana's effort to suck crude oil out of the swamps and the marshes and the waterways. They shut them down for safety inspections. So for more than a day, crude oil was not able to be collected because they wanted to make sure there was enough life jackets on board and enough fire extinguishers on board. Because yeah, you don't want an oil spill. Wait, we already have an oil spill. There is a concept that I learned when I was in the Marine Corps. It's called lead, follow, or get out of the way. If the U.S. government is not going to be leading, they need to get out of the way. With the U.S. government making statements like, we are going to keep our boot on the throat or on the neck of British Petroleum until this is fixed, how is that leading? It's not following. They need to get out of the way. Just recently, the U.S. government put pressure on BP to set aside $20 billion to help pay for this. That, hey, it's nothing short of extortion. Many people are concerned that money will not go to pay for the lost jobs and the lost wages for the people who need it. It is quite possible that that $20 billion will become nothing more than a political slush fund for the government to pay its friends. The government has made things worse by putting a 6-month moratorium on all deep water drilling. Now, first off, these southern Gulf states, they rely on the money made from oil to pay their bills. As ridiculous as that moratorium is, it gets better when the government now tells BP, hey, we're putting all these other guys out of business for 6 months, and you're going to pay for it. How is that BP's fault? It's not. All it takes is one tremendous deep-sea oil disaster like this for people to start thinking, hey, maybe drilling for oil closer to shore in shallower water where it's not as dangerous might be a good idea. Or maybe we should start opening some of the oil fields that have recently been discovered in the Dakotas and Montana and Wyoming. Just a thought. If you get nothing else from this video, here's what you need to walk away with. You need to walk away with, this is not the time to be pointing fingers. This is the time to be cleaning up the mess and getting the oil flow stopped. There is plenty of time for lawsuits and blame later. We have to get this stopped. And as government bureaucrats sit in their luxurious offices, there are people out there on the Gulf working hard to clean this up, working hard to try to get this well stopped. They're working on a relief well. Hey, it'll be till August before that's done. These things take time. I currently work at a place that if there is a catastrophic failure, people are going to die and there's going to be nothing we can do about it until it's over. This is a risk in the oil and chemical industry. This is the life we have made for ourselves, not just in the United States, but in the world. And to my friends who live down there in the Gulf who are affected by this oil spill disaster, all I can say is, hey, my heart is with you, and I pray that this won't be as bad as it could be, because we all know it's bad now, and it can still be a heck of a lot worse. And I hope that all of you are made whole, and I believe you all should be made whole. And just a quick side note here, for those of you who say I have no idea what I'm talking about and that I'm crazy, it was just a couple of years ago I made a series of videos about ethanol and the fiasco that ethanol is, and the fact that ethanol will never replace petroleum products for America or for the rest of the world. You may not remember those videos, and I don't have them up any longer. Well, you know what? It wasn't 6-8 months after I made those videos that the brand new multi-million-dollar ethanol facility that was built in my area was shut down. In other words, I know what I'm talking about. This is an industry that I have spent most of my adult life in. Whether you are pro-oil or anti-oil, whether you're pro-big corporation or anti-big corporation, you need to understand this. You are probably invested in oil companies right now, whether you know it or not. Do you have any life insurance? Because insurance companies are invested in big corporations and oil companies. Do you have any mutual funds or an IRA or retirement plan? You might want to check and see how much of that is actually invested in oil companies. You might be surprised to find that you're actually invested in BP itself. Like I said, I'm not promoting BP. I'm not a fan of BP, and I've never worked for BP. But I've worked in the oil industry. I have friends who work on the oil rigs. I have friends who are down in Louisiana right now working on this cleanup. So I kind of know what I'm talking about.
BMeister22, the most dangerous man on YouTube.